Hello and welcome to episode 196 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 7th, 2023. Today I'm wearing my Vortex shawl. This is a very special shawl that I knitted for very many years, or let's say many years. It was lying around and not being knit on. But I think last year I finally finished it. I think probably after 10 years or 8 years or 9 years after I cast it on. The pattern that I used for the main part is called Vortex, and it's a free pattern for a round shawl with a spiral pattern in the middle, and it spirals out. And you can knit the shawl as big as you want. I think I knit it until each of the 8 parts of the circle had, I think, 100 stitches. And then I decided to do a knitted on edge, which was rather crazy. The edge is, I took it from a shawl pattern that was in one of the Jane Austen knit magazines. And I think it's the afternoon tea wrap that I got the pattern from. And it took me a very long time to get this knitted on edge finished. I put a bead in every selvage stitch or every other selvage stitch. So they are fairly small, so they're not very heavy, but they just give a bit of sparkle on the edge and a tiny little bit of weight. The yarn is from Japan. My sister brought it from Japan a long time ago, and all we knew was that it was 200 grams and it was a pure cotton. It didn't have any yardage. It didn't give any recommendation for needle sizes or anything, so we just had to improvise there. My sister bought a different color for herself, and she knit the same Vortex shawl, but with a different lace edge at the edge of the shawl. Yeah, so that's my Vortex shawl. I'm not wearing it often enough, so I decided if I wear it today on the video, maybe I can remember to wear it more often in everyday life as well. And the top I'm wearing is, it's a sort of improvised top, but the pattern for the front and the back are taken from a book. The book is called Rustic Modern Crochet by Yumiko Alexander. And I just wanted to show you what the original looks like, just to show you how you can change patterns. So in the original, it's like a vest, and it's made of 4 squares, 2 at the front and 2 in the back. And I kind of like the pattern. I tried to crochet something with the pattern before, but that didn't work out. So it has 2 squares in the back and then 1 for each front. And I crocheted, I think, up to this round. This is this round. I worked from the pattern, and then in the pattern I think it only has like 1 or 2 more rounds, and that was still too small for my top, so I improvised all those rounds to make it a bigger square. And all I did was crochet 2 squares, and then in the last round of the second square I crocheted those bits together, and I crocheted parts of these sides together, and that's basically it. So it's nothing more than just 2 squares crocheted together. I use the Catania, which is this cotton right here in the shelf, and I use the sparkly, but it's not a pure cotton, so it's mostly cotton. It has a bit of a sparkle in there. And I used a white sparkly yarn and a grey sparkly yarn held together so that I could use a bigger needle size and it would be closer to the original. I first tried to do it with 3 strands of yarn. I think I had white and light grey and dark grey, I think. And then I could use the needle size that was in the book, but it was just too big. It was too heavy, and this is supposed to be a summer top, and if I had used 3 strands of yarn, it would have just been too bulky. So I went down to 2 strands and a different needle size, which is probably why it came out smaller than it was supposed to be. But then I improvised, and I'm really happy with the top that I got. Yeah, so dressed in cotton because it's summer, even if it's not really that warm right now. But the weather forecast says it's going to be warmer next week, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing. Then on to finished objects. I have 3 finished objects, 2 proper finished objects and 1 partially finished. I'll start with that one because I decided to go from small to big today. And the first sort of finished object is Normanda. So she actually is finished, but my project isn't finished because there are her 2 brothers and the mushroom and the toadstool. And there's 1 more gnome in the collection. This is the grimblewood collection. And then there's the cottage that I wasn't quite sure whether I should knit, but I will probably knit it. It's so much fun to knit these little things, and I think it would be sad to have the collection incomplete just because I was too lazy. So I think I'll do the gnome first, the last gnome in the collection, and then I'll see if I still have enough yarn and if I have enough energy to do the cottage. But right now I think I might. Yeah, so this is Normanda of Grimblewood. And you already know her hat with the little duplicate stitch that sort of looks like a little hat. And I did the nose, the braids, the arms, and her dress. And I did follow the pattern exactly, except for using a bigger yarn. But I'm not quite sure why the dress turned out so small. and one of the trouble of crafting at home and crafting here in my shop is that very often when I'm doing something, the other part or something that I need will be at the other place. So when I knit the dress, Normanda herself was not with me. So I didn't try the dress on. I just trusted the pattern. And then when I actually put it on her, I realized it's fairly short. But then Normanda said she likes a crop top and will stick with it. It just isn't a long dress, and but she's happy, and I think it suits her really nicely. And I'm very happy that she's finished and she can join the others. So Normanda of Grimblewood, patterned by Sarah Shearer, and I used Opal 6-ply yarn, this color and this color and this color. And the grey and the white are a DK weight merino yarn by Schachenmeier. Yep, so that's her. And then the next biggest project are the Contrast Blast socks by Stephen West. So the mystery's over. I don't think anybody's looking away now, but I think everybody who's interested has seen the socks by now. I finished the second sock. I'm really happy with the way they came out. I'm very happy with the colors that I chose because the black yarn is an alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm. These socks are really so soft and warm and squishy. The pattern is rather crazy. There's a lot going on, but it's okay. They fit my feet. I have photos of me wearing them on my Ravelry page if you're interested. And yeah, so that was an interesting experience. I don't think I'll be knitting a lot more mystery socks by Stephen West. I might do another shawl at some point. I don't know yet, but it was an interesting experience. I think the socks are quite unique and a little bit crazy, but I think that's what you expect when you get a pattern by Stephen West. And so yeah, really happy with my crazy Contrast Blast socks. And then the biggest finished project I brought today is my Hexagon cardigan crochet along cardigan. I actually finished it. I have woven in all the ends. I've sewn on the buttons. I had to try 3 times to get the placement right. The first time I tried to choose the placement, I looked at where I wanted the buttons, but then I went for where the stitches were and not thinking about the fact that I need to have a hole. So I had put the button where the stitches were, and then I'd have to either go through the hole right at the edge, which I didn't like. But if I used this one, it would have been too much fabric sort of next to the button. So I took them off again and I put them on again. And then at first I didn't want to put a button right on top of the cardigan, thinking it was too high. But then after I'd sewn on a few and tried it on, I decided I did want a button there. So I put the button up here, and then the spaces between the buttons were too close and I didn't get low enough because I hadn't calculated in the top button. So the second time around I left this button, but I had to take off the other two that I put on to try, and then took them off. And then the third time I sewed the buttons on, I was happy. So this is what the cardigan looks like now. It has 7 buttons and the lower part stays open because I wouldn't close that anyway. Here you can see the red part is the hexagon that I first crocheted, and then I enlarged the width and the length of the cardigan, and later on I lengthened the sleeves. I did a few decreases, as you can see. In the end, I crocheted round the whole cardigan for 3 rounds. So I did get a bit of a neck up here, and it is fairly high, but I thought if I was really cold, I'd probably like to close it. And I just thought it looks nicer to have the button there. Even if I keep it open or keep the top 2 open, it would still be nice to have them there in case I get really cold. This is the length of the cardigan. So I don't think it goes down to my knees, but it is fairly long. And I made from the leftover yarn, I crocheted a granny square. I put 2 more rows on one of the sides and I sewed it on as a pocket. So just for a tissue, or I could put my phone in there for a short time if I wanted. Yeah, so this is the cardigan. The only thing I haven't done yet is I haven't washed it yet. I will wash it and then lightly block it. I will just make sure that it sort of lies flat. Sometimes where you change the direction of crochet, so these bits were crocheted like this, and then this is just rows. It did look a bit funky sometimes when I tried it on, and the jacket did come out fairly wide, which is what I wanted. Didn't want it too tight, but it is so wide that I think I will block it lengthwise just a little bit to get a bit more length out of it, and knowing that it won't be too what's the opposite of wide? It'll still be wide enough even if I block it lengthwise. So that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I'm really happy. I used 250 gram balls of the red yarn and 3 of the blue yarn. And this is all that I have left after sewing on the buttons and crocheting the pocket and sewing that on. Yeah, so as I said, the weather forecast says it's going to be a lot warmer next week, so I may not be wearing it next week, but as soon as it gets a bit colder, I'll be wearing this on the podcast to show you what it looks like, and I'll probably have some modeled photos on Ravelry just after I've washed it to let you see what it looks like on me. Yeah, so these are all my finished objects, quite a few. I have 2 new cast-ons, which correlates with the 2 properly finished projects. So I'm quite happy with that, but I'm already planning loads more, you know me. Yeah, but works in progress and socks. I continue knitting on the film reel socks. I continue knitting on the second one, and the only reason that I haven't started the heel yet is that I didn't have the needles with me. So I could have done the heel on the circular needle, but it does take me longer and it's a bit more uncomfortable. So I prefer to use the double pointed needles, but I was at home and the needles were here in the shop, so I haven't done that. My goal is to finish this sock this week. So I really want to show this pair of socks to you as a finished project next week, because in the middle of next week is my nephew's birthday, and I just love to give them to him on time. So that's what I'm hoping to do. You can see the colors are quite close from sock 1 and 2, not exactly the same. They're a bit more different in real life, but yeah, I'll see how dark the heel is going to be. I was hoping for a bit of a darker heel and then maybe lighter films here, but we'll see about that. Hopefully you'll see the finished sock next week. We'll see about that. Yeah, so that was sock number 1. Then the next sock are the Sarah Scott stockings from the book Blue Stockings by, I put the book there, Kate Davies, so I wouldn't forget. I finished knitting the pattern on top of the heel on the first sock. So this is sock number 1, and I almost knit all of this last week. I just finished the 2-color pattern and put the stitches on hold, and I started the second one, and I started with the color work pattern, and then I had to stop because I'd left the red yarn here, so I couldn't continue knitting. No, I think it was the other way around. I think the red yarn was at home and I was knitting on the sock here, and I couldn't go on, and then I left it here and decided to do other things for the during the weekend. So this is part of the pattern battle over on the Ravelry, in the Ravelry group Opal Abo, which is the Opal subscription, and everybody taking part uses this color, but everybody's knitting a different pattern. And then I cast on a new sock because I had finished another pair of socks. I felt it was time to cast on another pair of socks. And this is going to be the first pair of my sock couple that I'm knitting every year. So every year I'm knitting a pair of socks for her and a pair of socks for him. And I give them away as Christmas present. And I've been doing this for 9 years. So this, I think this is the 10th year that I'm doing this, so it's a really nice tradition, I think, and I'm not in contact with these people a lot throughout the year, so knitting for them just helps me to think of them and remember them and stay in touch with them. And this year I decided to use 2 colors from the Opal Rainforest series. I think I've shown you the colors. I've have them as 4-ply and 6-ply in the shop now, but I usually do the sock couple with 4-ply yarn. So these are going to be her socks, and he'll get his pair out of the elephant color. Looking forward to that. And I decided to use a Sock Madness bonus pattern. One of the bonus patterns was called Squiggley Madness, and I did want to do the pattern, but I also decided to change a few things. So for the Squiggley Madness, you need a main color, which for me is this, and you need 2 contrast colors, and I decided to use red and black as my contrast colors. And then you start off with a crochet picot cast on, then you do the ribbing in the second contrast color, and then you start knitting with the main color, and you put these squiggly somethings onto the sock. So far, these things are per pattern, and the back is almost as the pattern calls for. So there are 2 squigglies in one color on one side and 2 of the other color on the other side. I have added in more purl stitches than there were in the pattern to give it a bit more stretch. And then on the front of the sock, in between those 2 lines, they're supposed to be like a diamond shape. Is it a cable pattern maybe? And then you're supposed to do some to embroider flowers into those diamond shapes. But I didn't want to do that. And then I thought, if I'm not doing the flowers, then I don't need the diamonds. So I decided just to do some ribbing in between. So the front of the sock looks fairly simple. It's just those 2 squiggly lines. And then the back of the socks has more of those squiggly lines. They only run down to the beginning of the heel. I could knit them into the heel, but I'm not sure whether that's comfortable. Now I'll probably stop them on top of the heel, then I'll do the heel, and then on top of the foot I'll just continue the ribbing and the 2 squiggly lines to the toe, and then they stop with the beginning of the toe. And my idea was that for his socks, I won't do a picot edge, and I'll only do 1 contrast color, and I won't do any lines on the back of the leg. I'll just do those 2 lines, and I will probably not even do them as squigglies, but just as straight lines. So it will look a lot simpler, but there will be, it should be obvious that it's the same pattern. So that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, so squiggly madness with a lot of modifications, but I think it's quite a fun pattern, and the lines should really look like zigzags, but they don't at all. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I think the crazier they look, the more they fulfill their purpose. Yeah, crazy socks. It's quite nice to have a bit of a sock madness reminiscence or something with these. Quite enjoy that, but without the stress and the time. Yeah, without having to hurry. By the way, I did 6 tiny balls of the contrast colors, and I tried to do these butterflies, but I didn't really look at how they were supposed to be done, and I improvised them, and they're not really holding up very well. So one of them has lost its shape completely already, but it works. I just need to pick the yarn up for that 1 stitch for each squiggly, so that should be okay. So that's the new sock cast on. The other cast on I'll show you later. Yeah, that's it for socks for today. I did not start the second slipper. I do feel a bit bad, but for the test I was only supposed to knit one of the slippers. I did that. I showed that to you last week. I gave the designer all the information that she needed, and I looked up the name of the pattern right now is Cloud Slippers. But as I said, I have already put in the link to the pattern, and as soon as the pattern is published, the link will go live on my Ravelry page, and then you'll see what the actual name is, and you'll be able to get the pattern then. But I'll talk about that more when I'm actually knitting the second slipper. Then on to garments. I have continued knitting on the girl's dress, the bilberry dress. Still haven't written to my cousin about how tall her daughter is, but I will do that at some point. Oops, sorry about that. I'm still knitting on the same ball of yarn that I just started last week. Yeah, it is a bit boring, but I do want it to be a nice and long and white dress. So I do keep knitting, I do keep increasing. And there's not a lot more to say about that, except for I keep knitting and I'm not giving up and I'm not forgetting about it. Okay, the other garment, the pullover that I'm knitting for myself, the Lama-Pullover. I am using this llama yarn that I bought, and I'm knitting the pattern by Nicola Susan. Yeah, it's linked underneath the video. I actually finished the first sleeve, and I did put 2 stripes in. I hadn't planned to do that at all, but after I re-knit the sleeve, I think I was a bit late starting the decreases after I did it too early the first time round, but I thought I'd rather have the sleeve a bit wider. I think it keeps warm. It keeps warmer if it's a bit loose than if it's too tight. And then I did this white stripe the way I planned, and I wanted to have 10 rows of ribbing. I think I have fewer rows up here, but still I quite like the idea of having 10 rounds of ribbing. But then I almost ran out of yarn, so the skein of yarn that I was knitting from, this is all that's left. I probably could have done one more round, maybe I could have done 2 more rounds. I don't know. I'm not going to cut this off. I'm going to leave this in and then do the second sleeve. And I think with the second sleeve, I'll just do this white stripe and then I'll try and knit the same amount of rounds for the ribbing. And if it works out with the blue, I'll undo this and try and do this in blue. But if not, it's fine to have the white there. Still have more than enough white yarn. I also have a second skein of the white yarn. So I was a bit surprised that I needed a whole skein of yarn for the sleeve. So it means I'll need another whole skein for the other sleeve. And that means I only have 1 more skein to do the front and back. So just in case that comes out a bit too short, I might end up doing even more of a white ribbing with the front and back. If I have to do a white ribbing, I will probably try and hold back as much blue yarn as I need to either just do the cast off or the way I did it here, so that I can knit 1 round and cast off the stitches. I may have to, it's always difficult to measure. The easiest thing to do would be to knit the round and cast off the stitches and then undo the whole thing and measure how many meters I'm needing. So if it gets really tight, I might do that. But otherwise, maybe, well, I'm a short person, so maybe it'll just be long enough with the 1 skein for the front and back and it'll be fine. I don't know. It's a big experiment. This pullover has been very exciting so far, and I keep changing my plans and my ideas, so that's very interesting. But now I need to knit the second sleeve. That should go a lot faster than the first one because I should only need to knit it once now that I know which size I'm going for. I hope it won't take as long as the first sleeve. So that's that. Then we come to the crochet section and I continue crocheting on the collar or short scarf that I'm crocheting, and I finished the middle bit. So this scarf or collar starts out with a main part that has a 2-row repeat, and you crochet along rectangular shape, and then once you've done that, you start with the sort of lace edging, and the first bit of edging just goes onto the 2 short ends and 1 long end. So on this long side I haven't crocheted anything, but I've done, I think this is 3 rows of pattern on the short end and most of the long end, but I've already started the 4th row on the other short end. So this is where I started the 4th row. So this is the corner, and then this is the next row of pattern. So this is row 3 and this is row 4, and this will grow even more, and then the last 2 rows are actually crocheted around the whole scarf so that this edge will look a bit nicer as well. And then you can wear the shawl or the scarf rather like this with the big edge on the outside, and then you put a string through it, and then when you pull on the string you can sort of create this collar. It sort of looks like this then, just with this bigger edge falling onto your shoulder. Yeah, so very excited to continue this crochet project and really looking forward to how this is going to look and feel, because this is the Royal Alpaca by Hansa Farm. This is the softest hairs that the alpaca have, and it's a really soft and wonderful yarn to be working with. Love it. No idea if 1 skein is going to be enough or not. We'll see. And that brings me to the other new cast on that I have this week, and that's another crochet pattern, and the pattern is called Grüne, is how it's written. I have no idea how it's pronounced. It's by Jasmine Räsänen. I think she's from Finland. No idea how to pronounce the pattern name or her name, but it's a crochet shawl pattern that I've had for many years. And one of my customers asked me if I had a crochet pattern that sort of looks like the shawlette that I wore last week on the video. So that was the, what was it? It was the Geckolino shawl, and she liked it, but she can't knit yet. She only crochets. And I said, well, you could imitate the design in crochet, but I have this other pattern, and she liked it as much as I do. And so to show her how to work it, I decided to crochet it with her, because I've always wanted to crochet the pattern, and now I had a good reason to do that. And I'm using this fantastic color by Wolldackel. I'm pretty sure this was part of one of the advent calendars where I had the 100-gram skeins, and I am using another color by Wolldackel, and that's that one. And I am pretty sure this was also part of an advent calendar that I swapped with a friend of mine. So I'm going to use those two colors together. I think they go together really nicely. I'm starting with this color, and then I want to crochet about half the yarn just in that color, and then I want to do those two colors, like two rows like this and 2 rows like that or something, mix them, and then finish off the shawl with the darker color. So that's the plan. That's what I have so far, and it's not very can't really tell what the shawl is going to look like afterwards. So if you want to know what shape this is going to have, you can go onto my Ravelry page and then click through to the original, and then you can see what kind of pattern this is hopefully going to be. Yeah, so that's it. That's all the projects I'm going to show you today. There's no knit along or crochet along running at the moment because I finished my crochet cardigan. You can still crochet cardigans and put them in the Ravelry group if you want. Even if I finish my own project for the knit along or crochet along, I never close the discussion threads, so you can keep adding things anytime you want. And I will be announcing the next knit along shortly. Yeah, and the only thing I'm still working on are the tutorial videos for the next knit along, and that's also the only knitting I haven't shown you today that I've done last week, because I've started preparing for the tutorial video. I was just not able to film it, but I might tell you next week or in 2 weeks at the latest what the next knit along is going to be. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!